Welcome to the Josh Huisman Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Josh Huisman Podcast. We are a few weeks into your 2024, and I hope your resolution is still going strong. Mine ended at the end of December, so I didn't even make it that far. No, I'm totally kidding around. But yeah, hey, if you are enjoying this podcast and you want to see it grow and have more great guests and people come in and be a part of it and listen to the conversations, share this with your friends and your family. Let people know about it, that there's new episodes every week because we bring great guests on here to talk about what's going on in their lives, music, ministry, whatever it may be. We just are thankful to have these talks. And today I have a very good friend of mine. His name is Galen Crew. He is an outstanding artist, producer, songwriter. I mean, we can start going down the list. If I were to ask you, Galen, how would you describe yourself? What would you say?
Thanks for having me on, man. This is exciting.
I know. I was like ready to jump right into this whole thing.
Yeah. I think you did a great job saying it. I probably think of myself first as a producer out of those roles. I'm an artist also and songwriter. Just musician. But I'm wired as a producer, more than any of those. So they're all plates I spin. Yeah.
Well, the first time I ever heard of you, and this goes back now more than several years ago. This goes way back when you were in the artist space primarily and writing. I think you had just come out with a project. This might have been around which one had, I'm the messenger, I'm just the messenger?
Better Than a Fairy Tale, my first
Better
EP. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and that was, what year was that?
That would have been 2012. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and of course I love that project. And then we reached out to you because we had a thing going on at the church here and wanted some artists to come and play, and you came and played. I think you opened up for the Vespers.
That's right. No, I remember it well. Yeah.
And had you be a part of that, and then later on you did some other shows, some fundraiser stuff for us, and man, it was really cool. And then I was a fan of your music.
You were very encouraging. I remember that. You brought me on for that show, and then I remember afterwards too. You were very encouraging and complimentary of my music. I think it was just me and a guitar. Or maybe I had, somebody accompanying me, but it was pretty modest, setup, kind of simple. You made me feel pretty good.
My family are like some of your biggest fans in this country for sure, because we have our Galen Crew playlists and all that. When I tell people about you and your music, you are an artist in the true sense of the word. Where I write some songs every now and then, I'm a singer-songwriter. You're an art. You actually paint pictures with your guitar and your lyrics, right? And so, for anyone who is not familiar with Galen's music, I highly encourage you to go and check it out. Okay, so we're going to start here. Galen.
Yes.
Crew.
Yes.
Galen Crew.
It's like Galen. It's a tough name, and especially in the South, people have trouble with it. But it's like I usually say, the first syllable rhymes with kale or whale. And it's true. It's like Galen is how, but it's hard to say. So I accept other variations of it. But yeah, that's so.
Well, I have a last name that's like that. Where,
you do.
Where the pronunciation is pretty much impossible. In fact, a few episodes ago, Mark Gershmel was on here, but my son Jordan's on the side, and Mark kept going, like Josh Huisman, and in the music of the Josh Huisman, and what he's doing, the Josh Huisman podcast, and I was like, I don't even correct people anymore. I was like, nope, that's
all good.
It is. But I would encourage people to, go on Apple Music, Spotify, all the different places. You have videos available on YouTube where you can go and listen, watch the videos. And I would encourage a deep dive into this man's music because it's artistry. And I say that because your songwriting is not the prototype songwriting style that is out there. It is very storyteller based, the music and the lyrics. Okay. And we're going to spend some time doing a deep dive on maybe some of this stuff. So But I want to know, like, where did that come from? Okay, like before we get into the accolades and things that have happened,
Sure.
when did you decide I'm just not going to be that paint by colors type of artist?
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate all the kind words. And just to say to you, I think I really value, all those kind of things you said, but also that you valued my music highly, like when I was just starting. I mean, that show that you mentioned, that was early for me, and that was a kind of a vulnerable season of like I'm just freshly stepping out with my creative, vision as an artist.
Yeah.
And during that those couple of years, it was like anybody that responded positively was huge for me, because it was like a sign that I could maybe keep going, So I appreciate that you didn't need the you were early in my journey, as far as being somebody that supported and kind of, I felt like you got what I was trying to do and understood it and liked it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think early on, I've always been inspired by like C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and particularly how, not just like the fantasy stuff, but using imagery and storytelling to communicate ideas and truths that you think are important, but just using that vehicle and I really like fairy tales. And so I've just always been inspired myself by those kinds of things, and like searching for the real meaning and substance within them, searching for the virtue within them that's eternal, and timeless. And so for my own artist stuff, it's pretty nerdy. I kind of always knew it's like this, how much of this is really going to appeal to the masses, because it can get kind of heady, and when you're doing, it's like storytelling in a song it's there's a few things you have to consider. It's still got to be simple and accessible. And so, yeah, I think that's just the kind of stuff that inspired me. And so I wanted to write songs that were transporting people into different worlds. And so the stuff that inspires me is like the fantasy, Narnia, The Lord of the Rings, and fairy tales. Like, and when I say fairy tales, not just like Disney, the old Disney stuff. Some of that's okay, the older stuff, but even if you go back further, like to Germany in the 1800s, and like the Grimm brothers and stuff like this, or even Hermann Hesse in the 1900s. Some of these writers were really brilliant, like in the way they would craft stories and fairy tales or just like just short stories, and that would kind of go viral in their own way. And you can read that stuff, and it's really wild. And so that kind of stuff lit me up. But as a Christian myself, I'm always searching for the hidden meaning or substance or takeaway that kind of points to the Lord, or like just eternal, timeless truths of heaven that we can pull on, and sort of understand. And like, so to use music as a vehicle to do that, I just thought was really exciting.
Yeah.
Like I want to listen to music like that. I want to consume art that does that for me and just inspires me, transports me somewhere else, and lets me just kind of dive deep into that world. And so it's almost like I've had to learn how to put myself in that world to be able to effectively communicate it.
Yes.
That's like the journey I'm
Definitely.
on. So,
well, when you mentioned Narnia and you mentioned Lord of the Rings and that kind of storytelling that's taking place, and having characters that maybe align with that can have a deep-seated faith message, right? But then looking for ways, how can you tell a story in a song in a special way that maybe a lot of other artists or songwriters are telling stories and they're more maybe for the masses, like accessible, but they have short staying power.
Yeah.
So how do you write something deeper and write something that hits in a different way? I love the fact that even what you do in your songwriting, and we'll get to the producing side of it, but let's just talk about songwriting.
Sure, yeah.
What you do in your songwriting is you're a fantastic guitar player, strings player. All that. Do you play the harp? I mean, anything with strings, you know. I've worked with this guy a few times on some of my own projects, and just your ability to pick up an instrument and just start noodling around on that thing and find parts is, I don't have that, and it's amazing. And then you put that in your songs. That the music you're writing is part of the storytelling process. Yeah. You know, where maybe if you're trying to write a 3 or 4 minute hit pop song, you're going to go verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro. Whereas you put in instrumental sections and all these different, maybe different arrangements, you know, and that's where I was like, when did that start? Because so maybe we can go in that question to before you were a solo artist. What were you doing? Were you in a band beforehand, like, and living that life, and you're like, I want something else? How did that start?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, when I first started, learning to play guitar, I took classical lessons. So that was pretty foundational for me, learning like, Bach pieces on guitar. That still definitely shapes in the way I write, like finger picking parts. Like that's, I'm just building on the foundation I started with in a lot of ways with that. But yeah, and moving forward, once I realized, I think I always wanted music to be an out, like a creative outlet for me. So the writing and the creating was always what I was attracted to, as opposed to just learning an instrument to play it. And that started for me when my parents got divorced, and I was searching for a way to process it, and ended up going to the guitar and learning like, I can write my own songs and get my emotions out this way. It was a pretty healthy outlet as a 11, 12-year-old kid. But that was the way for me. I realized like, I really like this, being able to just get, by myself in a room, process what I'm feeling through the music. And so in wanting to do that better, I was pretty driven just on my own to improve, like at the guitar. And so I went pretty strong into that in my middle school, high school age. But I never sang. I was terrified of even the idea of singing live or being the lead singer. So I was always in bands. So I love being the behind the scenes, like songwriter guy, kind of like directing, like any bands I was in. Probably I got on a lot of those guys' nerves a lot, the other band members, because I was, probably pretty controlling.
You're right.
But I never wanted to be the lead singer, because I just felt like I didn't have a good voice. That didn't come naturally to me for whatever reason, like guitar did. But I was in some bands and stuff, and it wasn't until I was in college that I felt like a push, more of like a calling to add the singing element to what I was delivering. Because otherwise it had to be somebody else's face, in a band or whatever, like them delivering the lyrics that I was writing or whatever. And so that shift didn't come till a little later. So did you have any level of success with the band and then went to the solo route, or was it just kind of like, hey, that's just not the direction that I'm going to go? Yeah, I mean, not really any significant commercial success or anything. The one band I was in, it was just a pop thing. We did have some opportunities in LA with a big label out there, and at one point had an offer to be featured in a Disney movie that it didn't really materialize, and those opportunities were real, and that was an exciting little chapter. I was in college with a couple of my buddies in this band, and that was my first serious brush with the music industry. I learned a lot through that, but I think one of my biggest takeaways was that it kind of showed me I wasn't interested in fame for fame's sake, or just being somebody who's like a face on a poster, like you just go on stage and like sing these songs that have been written for you and just run around and do this, do that, because that would have been a pretty quick, ticket to fame if that's what I was in for. But it kind of showed me, okay, I don't think that's really what I'm seeking. Like I want to be hands-on with the creative element. And so I ended up walking away from that band. and just doing a solo thing.
So does creativity run in your family? Like, because it's interesting when you say when your parents got divorced that you turned to guitar and started kind of learning more of that and playing through it. Yeah, but there are other people who go through things too, but they don't have that gift of what you have, because when you play, it's different. And I'm sure you've fine-tuned that and learned your craft over the years, and it wasn't like that in the very beginning. But at the same time, there are those who have different unique gifts and those who don't. And anybody who's going to go and listen to your music is going to see that right away. It's like, oh my goodness, you're a fantastic guitar player.
Oh, thanks, man.
And so clearly, is it in your family, the creativity and the playing or singing or any of that?
Not so much my parents. I mean, my parents aren't musical at all, actually. At all. My granddad on my mom's side was a jazz musician for his whole life. That's what he did. Lived in Manhattan. So I think most of that, whatever natural ability I started with, came from him probably. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my parents didn't push me into it, or I wasn't immersed in it as a kid. It was just something I got a hold of. And actually, in middle school, it would have been middle school for me, and some of the Christian music, like DC Talk and the Newsboys, that stuff really got my attention. Mm-hmm. So there was definitely that element. I was just drawn to it just automatically, just being interested in it. And so my parents, to their credit, were very supportive in that. Like, they realized, okay, he's really interested in music, and they got me guitar lessons, and they allowed me to go as far as I wanted to go with it, and they were very supportive in that. Mm-hmm. So,
so let's go into your music a little bit more, because you have a part of your story which is very cool. Okay, and your first couple projects that you have is Better Than a Fairy Tale, right? And then you came out you did Acoustic Daydreams, right? Which Acoustic Daydreams was basically kind of some different versions of songs that were on Better Than a Fairy Tale, right?
Yeah.
And you have a song on, I think it's on both of those projects, called Sleepyhead.
Yeah, that one's just on Acoustic Daydreams.
Just on acoustic. So you wrote it specifically for Acoustic Daydreams? Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, because that song seems to me to be really, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from a listener, that seems to be the start of a new way of writing for you, where you really lean into the fairy tale storytelling way of your songs, right?
Yeah.
And you put these projects out. You have I listened to both of them. I think I had actually you had CDs at that point. I think I even had both of those. And you're doing little shows and things around the area. You're playing a little bit, but then something happens with this Sleepyhead song that turns your world on its ear. Mm-hmm. And why don't you describe, because I think it's pretty amazing how this comes about. But here you are, you're an artist, just kind of doing your thing here and there, and then you start getting messages on social media.
Yeah.
So what happens?
Yeah. So and this was a song I wrote with Roger Cook, who is a brilliant, legendary songwriter that I had gotten connected to a couple years before I wrote this. But yeah, this was a low budget indie project. The album you mentioned, and a song called Sleepyhead was on there. Which that song is just it's like what I was talking about. It's a fairy tale. It's an original fairy tale that Roger and I wrote, and it's not impressive in any way. It's not cool. It's not flashy. It's just a very simple. It's acoustic track. I mean, low production, and so I put this out just as an indie artist, and not much happened in the first couple of years. Some people, I got good feedback on it, but also the song it's a little weird. It's really not. It's not like mainstream kind of stuff. You'd never hear it on the radio or But a few years after it came out, I started getting contacted by people in China who seemed to be like something was happening with that song. And I was slow to find out, because there's kind of a firewall between our internets, like in the US and China. And so I wasn't seeing any uptick in followers on my US social media, really. I wasn't getting paid for the first part of this happening.
Seemingly, there's nothing going on that's making any difference. Yes.
Yeah, it was like I didn't really know that anything would be happening until I don't know if it was Twitter or somebody in China reached out to me and he was like, "Do you know your song has more plays than Justin Bieber on this Chinese website?" And he sent me a link to one of the Chinese music platforms, and it was millions of streams and downloads, and I was like, "Whoa." Kind of thought it was a joke at first. I had no grid for this. I didn't have impressive numbers at all with anything to do with my artistry. So that didn't feel real.
You're like, is someone scamming me here?
Yeah.
Is there trying to get some, who knows?
Yeah, I didn't. It was actually hard for me to take seriously because it just felt so surreal. But then it kept happening. I kept hearing from people in China, and it was increasing around like 2015. And then somewhere in there around 2015, I started to go, okay, I think something's going on here. And I had a couple friends that lived in China actually at the time, and I asked them to like look this up. Can you look me up on these Chinese platforms that I hadn't heard of before? And I was still learning about these platforms that I didn't know about, and it turns out they're huge, there's so many users, and I was like, I probably should know about this anyway. But one of my friends in China looked up the song and he said something, he texted me, I think he said like, "This is bigger than you realize," or something to that effect. And he said there were fan forums, where they were debating the meaning of that song or some other songs that had tens of thousands of comments, and they were sharing pictures of me they were, I guess, pulling from my social media here and then upload it, and I had accounts with my name and photo already made for me on some of these, and I wasn't controlling at the time. It was pretty crazy, to find out. All the while, it's not affecting my life here in the least.
It had to be the weirdest thing in the world. Like I like sit and think about this, and you're just going about your day and probably thinking, oh, it'd be nice to, as an artist, to have some more exposure here and have some things going on, and then you're getting this put in and you're like, wait, what is going on? And so it had to have been a total mind
fracture.
Mind fracture for sure.
Oh yeah.
So, so as that goes on then, and more people are reaching out to you, it's funny because how many total streams do you think you've had over there?
Well, I don't know the official number because some of it, took place when it wasn't being properly tracked across multiple platforms. But if it hasn't already crossed, it's approaching 1 billion. Total. And I know, it's over the past few years, I'll average, around, between 60 and 70 million streams per year. Yeah. Kind of in that ballpark, but.
Right. Yeah. So to kind of put this in perspective, I'm going to go ahead and deface or defame my own stuff for a minute, because you helped me. You've produced some songs that I've worked on, that I put out, that have been fun. A little personal passion project I did a year ago called Seasons, and there's a song on there called Chase the Sunset, right? Which is funny because you're the inspiration for the guy who made me change the title from. Do you remember what the original title was?
I'm not sure that I do. No,
it had the word beach in it.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Beach dreaming.
Beach dreaming. Yeah, I said, hey, we got to do something about that. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Which was great because I think the title of the song, Chase the Sunset, is what has given it streams. And I was just geeking out before we hit play telling you, dude, I got 20,000 streams on Spotify. You're closing in on 1 billion streams in China, and yet in here, and I don't want to like make you, we're here. I tell my friends, like, listen, he's the biggest artist in the world that you don't know about. Okay. And so you need to know about this guy and what he's doing.
Yeah. I always feel like I have to qualify, because like the more people learn about the Chinese market and stuff. There's a lot of exciting things about it because in some ways a nobody like me can start off on a more level playing field over there on these platforms than I would ever hear. Like artists that get hundreds of millions of streams on their songs on like Spotify or Apple here are very well known artists, and so in the U.S. it can be, if you're not getting those kind of numbers, it can be hard to even break through or be in anywhere near the same conversation. But over there, it's a different situation. So,
well, I'm blowing smoke up here because I'm just telling. Like the reason why is because it's too good. Your music's too good. Here in the Americanized version, the way that we want things to be, which is like quick hitting, get to the hook within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
The song's 3 minutes long. If you go past that, you're really pushing it. And everyone's attention span is so small, whatever it may be. And I feel, and even when the project that I did with you was my first attempt to just go, I want to throw that out too. Like I'm always, in my writing, I have a tendency to go for the hook a little too quick, or and trying to follow a formula. But the project I did with you, the reason why I wanted to do it with you is because it was like these songs are going to kind of stretch out a little bit more, and I want them to breathe a little bit. And the way you even in your production and when you produce and work on things, just creating an atmosphere for a song, letting it have its own space, it just makes sense. I told you this before. Like I always think your music reminds me of a great throwback to a time in music when people would sit back and go, "What's that song about? Like, what's the meaning of it? Like, what's the music trying to say here? Like, there might not even be words being said." But what's the music saying in this case, So
yeah,
that's why I love talking about it.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and you're right. And I think we don't. It kind of goes both ways. We're really ADD as listeners and as creatives, generally speaking. So I think if you can, it can be hard to change that. It's like, I mean, the world kind of is what it is now, and but I think if you can slow down and like read books and listen to a song a different way, like it's good.
Definitely.
It's good. And so I'm happy to at least attempt to provide some, art that might have a little bit of that effect, on people.
Well, what was really neat though, going back to the China thing, then back in, was it 2016? When was the first time you went over there for a show?
I went there in 2016.
2016.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So to show how real it got, then they reach out and say, "Hey, you can come do some shows over here." So what was your thinking? Were you thinking, I'm going to go do concerts over there? Like, are there going to be people there, or what was the whole mindset?
Pretty much that. I mean, I just had I'd never been anywhere in Asia before. So I just had no grid for any of this. And some of those friends that I mentioned, that lived in China, and I had a couple here that had been to China. I just started talking to people like, "Hey, I think something's going on. A song of mine seems to be getting popular in China. I'm just wondering what I should do, And mostly when I would tell them about that, they would just laugh or they'd look it up and be like, "Yeah, you should do something about this. Like, you should go." And I started getting invitations from multiple agencies in China asking me to come tour there. And so I was like, okay, something shifted where I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna go, show up, but still had all those questions of like, I don't know if anybody's gonna come to my show. No idea. Because you have a song that has gone viral or what, it doesn't always equate to fans or supporters or people taking time out of their schedules to come see you. And I just didn't know what to expect. But some people came. People showed up, and I can remember I did a few cities in China on that first tour, and people showed up and they knew the words to like some of my deeper cuts. And I mean, I just never experienced that before. I'd never played to crowds that already, I felt like I didn't have to win them over because they already liked me and were familiar with me, that was a new feeling for me, and it feels great. You know, because performing doesn't come naturally to me, and especially in an environment like Nashville, it's like that pressure to prove yourself is pretty strong, and I just you know, it's kind of a difficult thing to break through when your mindset in performing is like you're trying to win the crowd over. Mm-hmm. So for me, this was a really big deal to go over to a country I'd never been to, and these people were excited to see me and singing the words to my songs as I was playing. I was like, wow, you know, it felt like they get me, you know, whatever sort of weird thing I'm doing, like with fairy tales, and they get it and they're enjoying it.
And it has to be so crazy. And one of the cool things that you did with the Sleepyhead song, and I remember it's been a year or so now when you put out the live version of it.
Yeah.
From your last tour over there.
Yeah.
And because I'll even play it for friends, and I'll tell them your story. And I'll say, like, and they'll go, really? Like, in like shows? And I'm like, yeah, listen to this. And you put on the live version, and you hear that crowd. Ah! I mean, they're like louder than you in the recording, and it's so cool. That had to blow your mind.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was. Yeah, mind fracture is the right term, and especially like after that first tour, and then I went back again that same year. It was like coming back home after that. It was the weirdest thing, because it was like, did I just dream that? I mean, like again, my life here is so largely unaffected by that. And, you know, it's changed a little bit now, but certainly in that first year that I went, it was like, there was this stark division between what I just experienced in China and people knowing me there. And, you know, I was getting recognized randomly, like in train stations or, you know, and that's never happened to me here at all. And so coming home back to Nashville after that first China trip was kind of funny. It was like, okay, now I'm just back to normal.
I know. Well, that's why I had you on the Josh Huisman podcast, so that now everyone will see your face and you'll be recognized everywhere that you're going to go.
Yeah.
you're like, I won't hold my breath from this show anyway. But your music,
I love it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, your music will stand on its own. One of the cool things, you know, to get off of the Sleepyhead song for a little bit, because starting a few years ago, you started putting out some of my favorite songs of yours are from the, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, the Apologue volumes that you did, which is like 3 or 4 different EPs that had 4 songs on them a piece, that really went in and took a deep dive on the story writing, the song, I'm getting this wrong, the stories and fairy tales and things of that nature. So which led up to now a new project you just came out with, which is a longer. Let's talk about those, the Apologue ones, and then get into Troubadour.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did those? You said I'm going to do these 4 volumes. How did that come about?
Yeah. Just wanting to kind of go deeper into this world that I. You know, kind of like I mentioned, I think the challenge and the invitation for me as an artist is to try to live within the world that I'm depicting more faithfully. And so figuring out what that looks like it's probably going to be a lifetime journey. But this was something that for me, like an apologue is where I look for words and like terms like fable, or, you know, an apologue is one of those words that's like, it just kind of communicates, it just sets the mood and the tone for like where you're headed.
Yeah.
You know, and then within that you can write about anything. And so the songs are kind of all over the place, like as far as the journey that I'm, you know, taking people on. But it was just a way for me to delve deeper into this concept of like using the fairy tale imagery and the parables to tell stories and communicate ideas. And so I released those volumes, probably, you know, 2017 through 2019. All those is kind of just rolling them out.
Yeah.
And some of them were well received, you know, more so in China, and a lot of that, I've kind of pivoted to them, in a lot of ways, because they want more of this kind of stuff, and so sometimes I feel like I have that audience in the back of my mind when I'm creating, like it's very much for them.
Yeah. Well, it has to be gratifying because you didn't start with that goal in mind, right? You were writing the things that you felt called to write, and the things that you had a passion to write.
It's still that.
And it's still that, right? And so what it was basically an audience found you.
Yeah.
In that space. And so then the music that you're even doing now is just, you're able to lean into that.
They're letting me continue. Yeah.
Yeah. And I appreciate it so much because you definitely have a spot on my own playlist where I've created my playlist of your songs that, to me it's a much needed, departure, like with how you do the music and how you do the writing, that I'm thankful for. So I'm glad that you just continue to do it. And so I turned off my phone because now I want to go down my favorites playlist of yours and put you on the spot.
Oh yeah.
But I got to turn my phone back on and able to do that. But all right, so you had you did 4 volumes of that. Mm-hmm. Do you know which one's the best song? I can tell you what's the best song.
Oh yeah, please. What is it?
So the one that we probably listen to the most in my family is "Everything's Fine."
Okay.
And the reason why we do which volume is that one on? Is it on?
That's on 1.
1. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the reason why is because it's 2 songs in one.
Yeah.
And so did it start off as 2 in 1, or was it always your goal, or did you write 2 separate songs and then you thought, I'm going to combine these 2 together?
Ooh, well, so that was also with Roger Cook, and I think at some point in the process we kind of had the idea of doing like two movements, if you will, in one track, or like kind of like a hidden track, or because it's long. So it was really just that first song, "Everything's Fine," but then somewhere along in the crafting of that song, we came up with a different bit of music. It was the same lyrical idea, but different musically.
Yes.
And we just thought, well, let's just throw all the rules out the window and just do something fun here with this one. And again, it's not for everyone, but it makes me very happy to hear when somebody like you gets a kick out of it.
Dude, I love it. And so we're gonna probably get flagged on YouTube, which is okay. But I'm gonna go ahead and this is really cool. This is the end of the first part. And so now you think the song's coming to an end, so we'll go on to the next one. But then we have the change that takes place. Anyway, we could sit here all day and listen to that one, but I just love that, like, just the freedom to, like, man, whatever that creativity is, and just to lean into it is such a cool thing. So
thanks.
I know that's
Glad you enjoy it.
Oh, listen, I'm probably fanboying out a little too much on you here, don't you think?
No, dude, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and then the other one, which was the one that inspired me to reach out to you and say, hey, I have a couple of my own songs I'd love for you to produce, is Lost My Way, which has...
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Yes. So those 2, Lost My Way, especially when you get to the part in the second verse where you would think you're going to continue to sing something, but then it just stops and does this beautiful musical arrangement. Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, so, and you and I, when we started doing this song, some of my own songs a few years ago, now we're continuing to work together even on a musical that we're working on called Barabbas that we're a couple songs in.
Yeah. Enjoying it.
Yeah. So
we've pulled from moments like that. Well, you know, things that you wanted to kind of, emotions you wanted to capture, and that were a little more orchestral, and
Yeah, so we've been having fun with the creative side of thing, can we talk about Barabbas?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Let's not do it just yet, but let's continue on here. So if we turn the page from your artistry side to the producing side, who are some artists and people that you work with? Like, what are you looking for? Like, do people find you? Is it worship music? Is it pop music? What's going on in the production world?
Man, little bit of all of that. I do a lot of indie stuff, like indie singer-songwriters, some worship stuff as well. I've produced some things for my church. So I like that corporate worship space too. I really enjoy working on that. And there's been some artists more in the CCM kind of world that I've worked with also. So not a lot of rock or country, a little bit of country. It's Nashville.
A little bit of rock and roll. A little bit of country, a little bit of rock and roll.
A few of those, but mostly I kind of camp out in that indie folk pop space, and some worship stuff as well.
Yeah.
And I love it. Like I said, I'm more wired, I think, as a producer. I love being in the studio. Being on stage is hard for me. I really got to psych myself up. And most of the artists I work with, they're like the typical artist can't wait to do that. And I enjoy helping people like that tell their story and find their creative vision.
Yeah. Well, we shouldn't gloss over that even here in the States, you have played shows with Phil Joel, right? Yeah. You've gone on and done some tours with him, and he's a friend of yours. And so, I mean, I probably painted a picture before like you haven't done anything here, but that's not true. You've done things here and been and Phil Joel, for those who don't know, he was Newsboys bass player, and he sings. Sings on a lot of the tracks you would know, and Entertaining Angels, I believe, is one of his that he sings. And so,
and that was the first song I produced for Phil. Was his version of Entertaining Angels. I felt very unqualified to do that because I remember like listening to that song as a kid. And just loving it,
That's pretty cool.
I was pretty starstruck just by him when I first met him. He came to one of my shows in Nashville, and so I got pretty nervous when I saw him.
I was going to say, did you look out and go, "That's Phil"?
Oh yeah, Joseph. I mean, I've been very familiar with him since I was growing up, so I was a huge fan. But he came to one of my little acoustic gigs. It wasn't even that many people there, and afterwards he was like, "Do you want to write?" And of course I was like, "Yes." And then he had me produce a couple of his songs for one of his solo projects, so we did. And then during that process, he invited me on the road with him. So this would have been like 2013, 2014, kind of around then, and we did a fair amount of touring together, and that was just like me opening up for him. And we were doing like church circuits and acoustic shows together. I would like open up for him, and then he would play his set, and then we'd do some stuff together. It was so fun. I mean, I got to learn from him. Yeah. He's such a great guy, such a genuine dude, And so, that was very formative for me to see somebody doing it, at that level and just kind of absorb everything I could.
And someone who believes in what you're doing and saw it. So that is very cool, how that came about. Okay, so then if you're working in producing space, I mentioned the thing that you and I are working on now is this play called Barabbas. And it's kind of that, again, it's another passion project. A guy who is here at New Hope, his name is Dan Zimmerly, wrote this play called Barabbas. And basically what the story is if you think of the movie Ben-Hur, where there's the main character who is living out their story, and then as they go down in their own story, Jesus is like interwoven into their story, where they meet Jesus and they have these interactions. In the Barabbas play, because there was always a belief that the Messiah would be one who would come and take over by military force, become the conqueror, become the leader. So in Barabbas, his parents think that he is going to be this for the people. And then over here on this side, you have Jesus in the story, right?
Yeah.
And we know how the story goes. But the play is basically this differences of the way that they think victory will be achieved.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the songs that I'm writing, of course, with your assistance, and when I bring them into the studio, is telling this story in the play. And think about it in the sense of the songs are, I don't know how you would even describe them, but very theatrical.
Yeah.
And my first inspiration in writing was kind of like Greatest Showman, but I don't know that we've really gone that route.
It served its purpose to inspire you in its own ways, but I wouldn't call this like any sort of imitation of that.
No, because there was a movie that recently came out over Christmas called Journey to Bethlehem, where it tells the Christmas story. And those songs were, to me, more Greatest Showman, where they're like very pop oriented. For King and Country was involved in them. Lecrae was involved. They almost have, so they have that flavor of like the Imagine Dragons style of songwriting or whatever. And I think that was my intent when we started. But in working with you, and I say this in a good way, it made it to go, let's just write them more, maybe how they would be if they were being sung in that time. Would you say that? I don't know.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's still like modern production, but yeah, we are definitely pulling from, we're grabbing onto little things like a certain Middle Eastern stringed instrument or something that plays a part in a hook that just communicates what it needs to put you in that space. And so it's like, yeah, it's its own hybrid, but serving the songs which you are writing, and and you're not going to give yourself enough credit, but you are coming with a lot of vision that makes it easy for me, So I hope people will know that when they finally get to hear this, that how much you're putting into this and visualizing this, that all the different musical moments, and kind of making it easy for me to just sort of paint that picture that is in your head. And of course, Dan's brilliant writing. Yeah. But it's that's been fun for me. That is kind of, it's a little different from what I typically work on.
Oh, you and me,
day to day.
Both.
Yeah. And I'm enjoying that.
Well, how much fun is it though? Yeah, to like not have any parameters on it.
Yeah, it's great.
It's like really we sit down and like the way I approach it, because you bring the musical talent of being able to play anything that I could sing or say, hey, what if the guitar did this, or I hear this, and you're able to pick it up on the guitar and play. I can't do that. I can think it and sing it out, but I can't do that. So my role, I felt like, has been, well, I need to bring as much of that as I can, and let you go, no, or yes, we can do that, or that's too much, or that's that kind of thing, But yeah, it's been fun
it's been great
to work on that kind of stuff. So
more to come.
Yes. I don't know when we're ever going to finish it, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a lot of work, to tell you.
Yeah,
man. So when we talk about let's get back to something, because when this podcast is coming out and people are listening to it, you will have just returned from another tour in China.
Yeah.
And so I know it's hard to talk about something, that this hasn't happened yet, but you're going.
Yeah.
And now when people are hearing this, you will have gone. So how'd it go?
Went great.
It was fantastic.
It's perfect.
So what are some things, as you're preparing right now? We're recording this the week before Christmas. In fact, it's almost Christmas. And this was a time when you and I both had a chance to talk about this. As you look ahead, what are some things you're thinking about on these specific dates that you're going to play? Things that maybe are just on your heart about it? Yeah.
Well, I think first and foremost, just really looking forward to seeing the people. I mean, it's always an adventure when I go to China. And this time I'm only doing 4 cities. So I think I'm going Shanghai, Chengdu, Guangzhou, Beijing, and kind of in that order. And so those are 4 big cities in China. And I think the last time I was there, I did 7. So it's a bit of a shorter tour. So just kind of trying to pack as much in as I can during that time. I kind of feel like I do the shows to get to talk to people afterwards, if that makes sense. It's like I I do the show, and it's a lot of work and preparation that goes into those shows. But I really enjoy the face-to-face connections with people. I mean, I've heard from a lot of people in China, how my music has affected them, which it motivates me so much when I hear these personal stories from them. People, that have told me they were clinically depressed, and a certain song of mine they just had looping for a season of their lives, and they have told me it brought them out of whatever cloud they felt like they were under.
Yeah.
When you hear that,
it has to inspire you to write more.
Of course, that's a lot of incentive, and I think going to China is when I experience just how real those personal stories are. It's like I can be encouraged when I get messages or comments on Chinese social media that say things to that effect. But it's not the same as when I go. So I just personally, it's just so life-giving to me, realizing like the music I've been just kind of slaving away on or whatever, when I go and just do the shows and meet the people, you really feel the weight and the reality of what the exchange that's been happening. And I only feel it, to its fullest extent when I go. Yeah. And so that I'm just really excited about that. Never gets old to meet these people and just say hi to them, get to talk to them for a few minutes after the shows. And I just feel like I live off that,
So do you find it challenging because you now, here we are, if your first tour over there was in 2016 and now here we are in 2023, you've put out a lot of music in that time. Yeah. So now you're facing the challenge of what are you going to play? Obviously you're going to play Sleepyhead, but how do you put together a set list now at this point where you have a whole catalog of music that you can't play for 4 hours, or can you? I don't know.
Definitely can't. I'm no Bruce Springsteen, especially since I don't tour very often. This for me is like, I gotta get into like preparation mode with my voice and stuff. It can be pretty taxing, if you don't do it regularly. So it's been challenging. This has been dubbed the Troubadour Tour. So my latest album, Troubadour, came out a couple months ago, and so I'll be playing songs from that, but also songs from a lot of my other projects as well. So I can't fit everything in there, but I'll be playing most of the ones that they have kind of decided are their favorites as far as like what's popular on NetEase music in China and stuff. I'll be doing most of those. And then a few that I just want to do, songs that maybe aren't as popular, but there's something about them that I want to, I want to sing it for some reason or other at this point in my set in the evening. So there's definitely been a lot of crafting that's gone into it, and I hope people enjoy it. Yeah.
So let's talk Troubadour a little bit, because you said it just came out a few months ago, and it's a cool story of an idea of what you came up with. And so why don't you just kind of set the stage, because it's, again, a different kind of project that tells a story. And so where did the idea come from?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always been really inspired by the troubadours, which, during the Middle Ages in Europe, there were these guys, most of it kind of started in southern France, but troubadours were traveling musicians. Sometimes they were enlisted in like military service and just found themselves kind of traveling throughout Europe. But then they were songwriters and poets, and would it's like this culture started to develop out of these guys that would sort of like kind of compete with each other as they were writing these songs. And, word would get out about a certain troubadour or a certain song. And this just whole culture came out of that. And so thinking about the traveling musicians in the Middle Ages, that were, a lot of their songs would be either like romantic poetry, or they'd be packed with metaphor and symbolism related to something that was going on, or just some idea they wanted to communicate. But it was kind of a model of art, and that developed out of this, that I just think is really interesting. And so my idea was like kind of partly, what would a troubadour sound like if you pulled him out of, whatever the 1200s into today, what would that sound like? Or what if you had a troubadour that wasn't bound by time or space and could do that all over the world from any era? Like, so he could travel, to any part of the world, any time in history, write a song about it, and travel back to another time and sing it to you. And so it allows me to write anything. So some of the songs are like a 17-year-old boy goes on a journey on a trade ship, like a clipper ship. That the British had these trade ships, during the 16, 17, 1800s that would go down the coast of Africa and over to like India. And you'd have these young men that would travel on them, and then sometimes they'd shipwreck, and so there's the one story about that. And then there's others, there's stories about these epic battles. And there's a song called Walk the Wall that kind of imagines a knight is standing on the wall of a castle about to fight this great battle. And then this internal dialogue starts of he's wondering if he has what it takes to face what's in front of him, and what kind of thoughts would go through his mind, Yeah. And there's a song about that. So it's just been it's a template that I can just go all over the place. And I like this idea that's, it's like, I like things that feel transcendent and where there's no ceiling on what can be created or said at that point. Just that gives me that permission to feel like I could create anything.
Yeah.
And this was one of those concepts where it's like, okay, a troubadour that's not bound by time or space, and then I can transport people to a number of different places within that idea. And so it's just a bunch of songs, very nerdy.
Well, the writing of it almost makes me, and I could be wrong, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, okay? It almost feels like some of them have like a hymn-like structure to them, where they follow like verses, like there's multiple verses that just the story goes along, and some of them have hooky choruses and the stuff that you would expect, but then others are more interested in the story and what services the story correctly, which I think is a great way to approach it.
No, thanks. I like, and I can't give Roger Cook enough credit. So all the songs on Troubadour were co-written by Roger Cook, and so he and I, we can write things together that we've just, it's a certain.
For people who don't know who Roger Cook is, okay, can you tell them who he? Because
I think he's the only British songwriter in the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. That's at least been true for a while. I think it still might be true. He's written, I think he's had over 12 #1 songs, and he's older now. And he was a contemporary of Paul McCartney, and so he came out of England in that whole era of music in the early '60s. Like Roger was right in the middle of all that, and so but he's lived in Nashville and in Franklin for decades now. So he's had a lot of country hits. But he is a brilliant storyteller. So, people have to know a lot of the stories that, and you're like, where did that come from? Roger Cook is a crucial part of the recipe there. He's brilliant. He's amazing. And so we have great, when we write, it's like, it's just even though he's a lot older than I am, we feel like creative peers. It's like the age gap kind of disappears when we write together. We just go after this kind of idea. And so, it's been great. And there's the Troubadour project kind of goes all over the place, like I was saying, but there's a lot, it's kind of heavy on the Middle Ages. The medieval aesthetic is like a big part of it for this one.
Even if you look at the artwork and all this stuff, it pretty much is. Yeah. Well, cool, man. I'm so glad you came on here, and I hope you're resting well and sleeping right now, recovering from your jet lag, and because you will have just returned from a successful tour and all that. So, but man, thank you for being on here. Any final thoughts you want to share with anybody?
Oh man, thanks so much for having me on. I love what you're doing, and feel honored to be a small part of it. So
Yeah.
thanks, and looking forward to creating more with the Barabbas stuff, and
Definitely.
people will be hearing more about that eventually, I'm sure.
Or maybe we should go back and do Beach Dreamin' Part 2.
Beach Dreamin', yeah. Resurrection, Beach Dreamin', yeah.
So Galen's so nice. When I had a line in that song for Chase the Sunset, it was like Beach Dream. I can't even remember how it originally went now. It was the line, if you go listen to my song Chase the Sunset, the line now is let the horizon heal your soul. But it was Beach Dreamin' to heal you, something like I knew it was always
It's
awkward.
a lot better now.
Yeah, and so we actually were in the studio recording that line, and I think we put it down a few times, and I sang it, and you like hit pause, and you went, so, are you like, I can't remember the words you do. It was so nice. Is that the line? Is that it?
Is that the final?
Is that the final? Yeah. Are you married to that line?
Yeah, right.
I think that was maybe what it was.
Yeah,
and I was like, at first I was like, yeah. And then I was like, why? so we changed
Just wonder if, and then I like what you changed it to.
You were 100% right. And it pains me to say it, but I was wrong the whole time. So anyway, so all right, special thanks to Galen Crew for coming on here. I really do want to encourage you, go check him out. His music on Apple Music, Spotify, anywhere the music is. New project's called Troubadour. I encourage you to go back into the Apple Log volumes. You can go down the rabbit hole, man.
Yeah, there's too much content out there.
It's good, and I encourage you to do it. So anyway, thanks for being on here, man.
Thanks
I really
for having
appreciate
me.
it. All right, so new episodes every week. Tell your friends, tell your families, share it. Help me out on social media and share this. We have many great guests like Galen who come on here. Pastors, musicians, artists, friends, all that fun stuff for these conversations. And so we'll be back here next week with a new episode, and I hope 2024 is going well for you so far. Okay? All right, have a great week.